Hello, it's Mark from Haunted Auckland and Paranormal New Zealand here. Welcome to another episode of Outside the Box. And for today's episode, I'm going to be talking to a chap that I've been wanting to talk to for many, many years. When I'm not out hunting ghosts, I'm also researching other things, other mysteries of the world, like UFOs and unusual creatures, cryptids. His work I've found very inspiring and intriguing. He's a lake monster hunter, he's a cryptozoologist, and he spent a lot of time hunting everything from Loch Ness Monster to Lake Champlain's Champ. This episode I'm going to be talking to Scott Mardis. He's a cryptozoologist, lake monster hunter, and a guy that's been in the field for many, many years, and I found him a great inspiration to my own research. So we're going to sit and chat a little bit about lake monsters. Hey there, Scott. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite a while, Scott.
Thank you.
Your messages have been popping up on my feed for quite a few years now, and I've been seeing photographs that you keep posting that a lot of them are historical photos that I've never seen before. So it just shows how big this actual field is and how much actual evidence, whether it's hoax or real, is actually out there. So I'm still seeing new photos today that were taken back in the 80s.
Yeah, well, most of the research that I concentrate on are the reports of these long-necked lake monsters and sea serpents that resemble fossil long-necked plesiosaurs. That's primarily what I'm concerned with, because what brought me into this initially was the idea that these fossil marine reptiles may still survive. And that's been the primary focus behind what I've been trying to do all these years.
You're doing a pretty thorough job too, from what I can tell.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, it's which is why I wanted to sort of highlight you over this way a bit, because I think a lot of people over here in New Zealand don't hear about the researchers overseas in the States and the UK and all that. So I'm trying to highlight some of the researchers over here.
Surely you're familiar with the famous carcass that was pulled up by the Japanese fishing boat off Christchurch.
Yes.
Well, I've studied that case from every possible angle.
Are you going for the basking shark theory or something else?
Well, I'm undecided. I still have an open mind on it. The great majority of the evidence points toward it being a mutilated basking shark. However, there were a few scientists that were involved in the scientific study of it that held out for a possible undescribed reptile. And that part of the story has been kind of buried over the years, but it's true.
There was a bit of a cover-up, wasn't it, at some point?
Well, not really a cover-up. I wouldn't say a cover-up. I think what happened was the researchers got focused on the shark idea and kind of got tunnel vision and concentrated on that and didn't thoroughly explore the reptile idea enough, in my opinion. Because if you really look into the possibility of it being a reptile, there's a better case than has been presented over the years.
Yes, it was quite an intriguing one. I remember reading about it as a kid and thinking, it's odd. It doesn't seem right. It's
Well, I was 13 years old when that happened, so it was all over the newspapers, all over the world, you know. The thing that most people didn't realize at the time, and the reason the shark idea has so much power is the fact that there's a whole series of carcasses that resemble that have washed up different places all over the world. And unlike the New Zealand case, they were able to retrieve portions of the skeleton and the skull and confirm that it was a basking shark. Whereas in the New Zealand case, the only physical evidence that was brought back were fibers from one of the flippers, and they didn't bring back any of the skeleton. So that's one reason that it's, considered somewhat of a mystery.
I would have thought, if any part was to be brought back, I would have thought the head would have been the most logical part to.
Well, they should have.
Hold on to. Yeah.
The problem was, it was a commercial fishing boat, and they already had a catch of fish on board the ship. This carcass was rotten, and they didn't want to contaminate the fish that was already on board, so they dropped it overboard with the idea of sending another boat back to retrieve it. But before they dropped it overboard, they cut some tissue samples from one of the fins or flippers, measured the body proportions with a tape measure, and photographed it 5 times. So that's all the evidence you had to work with. They sent ships back to try to find it, and they couldn't find it again. They pulled it up in a fishing net from a depth of 1,000 feet below the boat. And forensic experts that looked at the photographs and examined the evidence were of the opinion that it had been dead probably at least a month before they pulled it up. So it was in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
More or less skeletonized with some pieces of skin still attached to the bones, to the backbone, and there were some of the flanks of the flesh on the side of the body were there, and a few skeletal elements.
Yeah. And held up by that crane, it kind of did sort of give a pretty amazing image.
Yeah.
For the media anyway.
It's really an interesting case, but as I was saying, there are several other cases that are very similar that were confirmed to be mutilated basking sharks. If you know what a basking shark is, it's a large filter feeding shark, second largest shark in the world to the whale shark, which is also a plankton feeder. And what happens when these sharks die, their skeleton is made out of cartilage, and the jaws are actually a separate piece from the cranium. They're attached separately, and when they die, the jaws and all the gill apparatus falls off. And what you're left with is the cranium that looks like a turtle skull or the top of a plesiosaur skull with no teeth, and the backbone going back to the front pectoral fins. So when that happens, it looks like a creature with a set of flippers with a long neck and this tiny little head. And that's what causes the confusion.
Yeah.
So the fibers that were brought back from the carcass from New Zealand were very close biochemical matches to the same types of fibers that you find in the fins of sharks, particularly basking sharks. So that's one reason, looking at the anatomical features and the biochemical evidence combined, is the main reason that so many people plumbed and said, well, this is obviously a mutilated basking shark. But one thing that the researchers weren't aware of at the time in 1978 when they were doing their studies is that there was evidence of similar type fibers in fossil ichthyosaurs that were preserved as fossils. There was a paper, an obscure paper written about this in 1841 about these exceptionally preserved fibers in the fin of an ichthyosaur, which was a marine reptile, if you know what I'm talking about. They were like dolphins.
Yeah.
They were contemporaries of the plesiosaurs, but they were different. And since that time, a few years ago, there was an exceptionally well-preserved plesiosaur found in Germany that also had some fibers in its flippers. It's very difficult to retrieve biochemical information from fossils that are 60, 70 million years old, but they've gotten fragments. So maybe someday we will know whether these fibers found in these fossil marine reptiles is chemically similar to the fibers from the thing from New Zealand. While most of the scientists, there's a set of scientific papers about that carcass that were published by a French-Japanese Oceanographical Society in 1978. And in those papers, most of the scientists said, we think this was a mutilated basking shark. However, there were like 3 or 4 holdouts. There was a ichthyologist that said, based on the body measurements, that the back set of flippers were in too posterior position for it to be any known species of fish, shark or bony fish or otherwise. And then there was a paleontologist who also happened to be a plesiosaur specialist that said at the end of the paper that he wrote, it says, there is still no decisive evidence to decide whether the animal in question was a shark or an undescribed reptile. He wasn't saying it was a plesiosaur. He wasn't saying it was any specific type of reptile, but he did leave open the question as to whether it could have been an unknown marine reptile. And obviously, if it was a marine reptile, it very much resembled a plesiosaur, at least the basic outline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the closest you got to confirmation of it being some kind of relic marine reptile. However, usually they always, when they do a review of the case, they always say, well, it was proven to be a mutilated basking shark. No, it wasn't proven to be one, but the evidence was heavily suggesting that.
Yes. However,
there were a few holdouts, and that part of the story tends to get buried. But if you go and look at the scientific papers from 1978, there were some doubters. So there's a slight case that particular case could have been a reptile, which may be long-necked plesiosaur-looking thing we're looking for. I don't know. At this late day, with the small amount of evidence in that particular case we have to work with, that's about as far as we can go with it until some new data comes along that, can add to the pile. So,
actually, another New Zealand another New Zealand crossover that you may or may not have been following is one of our own professors from the Otago University, Neil Gemmell. It was doing the DNA research.
Oh yeah, the Loch Ness thing. Absolutely.
There's another New Zealand tie-in there.
Following that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on his
There's
findings?
supposed to be a scientific paper coming out about that sometime in the near future. Yeah. I saw all the press conferences, and there's a website, Supernatural History, I think it's called, that has all the data put on the website.
I think he was leaning more towards it being eels, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There was an extraordinary amount of eel DNA found in Loch Ness. So that led them to the conclusion that if there is a Loch Ness monster, the most likely answer is a large eel of some kind, maybe a conger eel that somehow managed to adapt to fresh water. Makes the most sense to me, because we know that the European conger eel can get 10 feet long, and you also have these freshwater New Zealand eels that can get 6, 7 feet long.
And they can live to well over 100 years old, can't they? So
yeah,
why not? Yeah. Actually, there's
they found no reptilian DNA in Loch Ness. Now, all that means is that it doesn't rule out there could be some kind of reptile that occasionally visits Loch Ness and is not there long enough to leave an environmental DNA signature. what that does say is there is no resident population of reptiles living in Loch Ness.
Yeah.
If you follow me.
Yeah. So with Loch Ness, you're going sort of more to you're leaning more towards eel now in your research?
Well, I guess if all you're going by is the environmental DNA, that sounds like the most promising answer. But
yeah,
wait
I've always
and
liked the
see,
sturgeon one. I've always loved the whole sturgeon idea. They're pretty amazing beasts, aren't they?
But the thing is, they found no sturgeon environmental DNA in the survey.
Yeah, that's right.
And they found no Wells catfish DNA or a Greenland shark either. So that seems to rule out all three of those theories, unless you're dealing with ones that only occasionally visit Loch Ness, which is possible.
I read a piece a while back. I think you sort of contested it or refuted a bit about the theory that that champ over in Lake Champlain was reptilian in nature, and you sort of refuted that a bit.
Well, I think that champ probably is a reptile, and that if it is, it's probably some kind of plesiosaur relative or something along those lines.
But I think it was leaning more towards crocodilian. It was more of a crocodile, sort of. I think the article was saying.
Well, I did write a skeptical article going over my reasons why I don't think it is a crocodilian. Because all known crocodilians are egg layers. They're tied to the land. They come ashore to lay eggs. Now, there is the possibility that some of the Mesozoic forms that had flippers may have given live birth. There's been speculation about it, but there's no real strong evidence for that yet. So until that comes along. Another thing that would seem to rule out a crocodilian is there are no long-necked crocodilians in the fossil record.
But that's what I was thinking, like with that article, it seemed they were talking about all the eyewitness accounts saying that it looks like a crocodile. And I was thinking, well, the crocodilian angle seems to go against what other people are claiming to see. I don't know, it didn't make sense.
Basically what I was trying to do was another champ researcher had come out with her theory that she believed that the champs were closely related to crocodiles and to this amphibious reptile called Tanistropheus, which was a theory that Dennis Hall came out with during the 80s and 90s, which is an animal that looks like a plesiosaur or a sauropod dinosaur, but it's got, instead of flippers, it's got legs with feet. It's more amphibious. Would spend more time on land than apparently champ does. And you've got all these reports as well as photographic evidence from Loch Ness that the Loch Ness monsters probably have flippers. And I find it hard to believe that you would have some animal in Lake Champlain that looks so much like the Loch Ness monster that would have legs with feet, and then have a totally separate type long-necked animal over in Loch Ness that has flippers. I mean, some of the most impressive evidence that exists for the Loch Ness monster are the underwater flipper photographs taken back in the early 70s by Robert Rhines and his people, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yep.
People that are inclined to believe in the Loch Ness monster find that some of the most persuasive evidence there is. Therefore, I'm basing a lot of what I'm saying on that. Even though those pictures are controversial, they've been computer enhanced, a lot of people still think they're valid as evidence. So basically what I'm trying to say is I don't think that champ is some kind of animal with legs with feet that comes ashore to lay eggs, which is probably what you would get with a crocodilian type animal or a Tanistropheus like animal. I'm saying I believe, based on the majority of the eyewitness testimony evidence, the photographic evidence, video evidence, bear so much resemblance to the best evidence from Loch Ness, I think they're the same animal. Like back in the 70s, the Loch Ness Monster was given the Latin name Nociturus rhombopteryx by Robert Rhines and Sir Peter Scott based on those flipper photographs. Basically, what I'm saying is I believe Champ is probably a subspecies, Nociturus rhombopteryx champlainiensis. I think it's the same animal, just a different population. And I think they probably had their same origin somewhere in the North Atlantic around the time of the end of the Ice Age. One group swam west and went into Lake Champlain when it was the Champlain Sea, and another group went east and went into Loch Ness when it was connected to the sea. And they both have, over time, adapted to fresh water, or just come and go like I was talking about earlier.
Well, you've spent quite a bit of time on Lake Champlain, haven't you? You lived out that way for quite a while. So
yep, I lived there for 18 years, and I'm still going back every summer.
Yeah.
So I've been doing field research at Lake Champlain for 27 years.
Wow, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yes, no, I'm always enjoying seeing the photographs out there. It's one place that I've been intrigued about for a long time, so I'm really keen to get over there, and hopefully I will in the next couple of years. If the world can sort itself out and I'll be allowed over.
Yeah.
So so your Champlain, your champ research. I'm keen to hear more about that. What have you? I mean, I'll add some of your videos and photographs and things like that onto the video afterwards. But your thoughts on Champ? Any new developments through the years? I mean, have you changed your opinions through the years with the research?
Well, I can only go as far as the evidence leads me. The only what I would consider a typical sighting that I've had happened in 1994. And I saw an animal that resembled a large sea turtle, about 15 feet long, I reckon. I saw it through binoculars. And it was a garbage bag color, a greeny black, almost the same color as a leatherback sea turtle, but without the spots. And I think it was swimming on its side with one of its flippers held up in the air. This flipper object could potentially have been a head on a shortish neck too, or a retracted neck, I don't know. But that's what I saw. And the day this happened, I went home and I made drawings. And I sent you these drawings. The second drawing, it turned to the right, and this smaller hump-like object, which I said before I think was probably a flipper, was on the right, and it swam to the right for a few seconds and then stopped and sank. I didn't have a camera, but I was watching it through binoculars. Then the Japanese Asahi Broadcasting Network came in 2016 to make a documentary. And they brought all these underwater cameras, and we went to the deepest part of the lake, which is a place called Split Rock. It's 400 feet deep. We put this camera down, underwater baited camera with salmon on it, 80 feet below the boat in 400 feet of water. And on the video, you see this flipper-like appendage or a tail or something come up and touch the bait. The bait was probably about the size of my hand, so I'm guessing this appendage-like object was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 feet long that you could see it on the video. But I sent you that video too, so you might want to pop that on there.
Yep, I will do.
So it's clear as day. You see a hook with this piece of salmon hanging on it, and then you hear this popping sound. Then you see this flipper-looking appendage come up and touch the bait and then withdraw. So I can only assume, because I didn't see any head features, that what this was either a tail or a flipper or a fin. Now, it could have been a very large fish. It resembled an eel's tail. I don't know. But you only see part of it, but you see it clear as day on the video.
その映像がこちら。さらに。もう一度ご覧いただこう。何かがぶつかった。そしてその直後。カメラの前に現れた白いものは一体。
釘って感じだよね。What do you think, Scott?
おそらくジャンプのヒレか尻尾の可能性が高いと思う。
Then, in 2017, and you can see this on the Small Town Monsters miniseries called On the Trail of Champ. Me and my late research partner were over at the mouth of the Ausable River on the New York side of the lake, and this object goes swimming under the boat, and we get it on sonar. It's basically a turtleish or plesiosaur-shaped object with a large round body and an appendage, thinner appendage coming off of it that looks like possibly a neck and a head. And it swam under the boat for about 2 minutes, and we got it on sonar, and we estimate that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of between 10 and 13 feet long. So it's possible that this could have been a juvenile champ swimming under the boat. We just don't know. It's also possible it could have been a densely packed school of fish, or it could have been a coincidentally shaped piece of wood debris. There's just no way of knowing, but it was moving, and it seemed to have swam under the boat and then disappeared off the sonar. So that was an interesting thing that happened. And I sent you photographs of that. Let me see. Well,
what was the other one? There's video footage of this, and it's taken off the side of a boat, and there's like a long...
Yeah, well, I'm coming to that.
Yeah, that's quite intriguing.
Yeah, that's the Bodette video from 2005.
Yeah, that's the one.
The reason that Will and I were over at the mouth of the Ausable River when that sonar contact happened is because that's basically the same place that video was shot back in 2005.
Okay, got it.
And I also sent you another video, which is called the Olsen video. You see this turtleish looking creature swimming at the surface, bobbing around. That happened very close to where my sighting happened 15 years earlier. And the object in that video looks very much like the object that I saw, the turtleish object. So
that's the one that just sort of swims across the screen, doesn't it, very slowly from one end to one side. Yeah.
It looks very much, it's shaped very much like a turtle. But it's much bigger. It's got to be at least 6 feet long based on measurements made for the objects. There's a buoy you see in behind it and other landmarks that you see in the video. So they've estimated that whatever this thing was about 6 feet long, and that's about twice the size that the snapping turtles in Lake Champlain can get. So whatever this was either a big floating log or a hoax or some kind of large turtleish looking animal, which could also include a plesiosaurish animal. Yeah,
I mean, to me it doesn't look like a hoax. It does look like an animal of some description just paddling its way across the lake there.
Well, just because it's so odd looking, several people have wanted to dismiss it as a hoax. but there's no evidence that it is a hoax.
No. It looks natural to me.
Yeah, me too. Now, there is the possibility it could be a floating piece of wood that happens to be that shape that's bobbing up and down.
Yeah.
You can't really dismiss that, but it looks like it's alive in the video. So
Yeah.
we just don't know. But the guy that took the video has never tried to make any money off of it. He's never copyrighted it. He's never stopped anybody from studying it or even using it in a television documentary. So obviously, he's not trying to pull a hoax or make any money. And he was perfectly honest with the interviews that he did at the time that it happened, and has since declined any more interviews just because he said all he had to say on the subject and just doesn't want to be bothered about it anymore.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not trying to make a name for himself with this video. He's not trying to make money off of it. So I don't know what his possible motivations could be, other than that this really happened and he's just telling the truth and now wants to be left alone. I don't know. So you're left with, here's the video, it could be this, it could be that. So it's still an intriguing piece of evidence. And to me, the Bodette video and that, plus Sandra Manzi's photograph from 1977, are
That's a
as
good
good
one.
as
I like
it
that.
gets.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of debate going on about that one being a log and all that, but I don't know. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good photo.
Well, it looks like a head and neck of a plesiosaur, really. Like it's looking over its back.
Yeah.
And I was able to find a photograph of a monitor lizard, an aquatic Salvadorian monitor lizard with a head just like it. You can put the two photographs side by side, and the head looks exactly the same. Yeah.
Wasn't the one of the discrepancies to that theory, though, that it being a plesiosaur, was the fact that it was found out later in life that the plesiosaurs couldn't actually swim with their head out of the water like that. They swam by that.
There's a lot of debate about that. Some paleontologists think that, and then other ones disagree with them. And there's a lot of aspects about the biology of plesiosaur necks that are controversial. And probably the most important factor that is still controversial is how thick was the cartilage between the vertebrae, that the soft cartilage that would have separated the vertebrae and plesiosaur neck bones. They're not sure. The wider, the thicker the cartilage between the neck vertebrae would have been, would have gave them more flexure in the neck, if you follow what I'm saying. And they're just not sure. That's not preserved in the fossil record.
Yeah.
In other words, when the animal died, the cartilage between the neck vertebrae dissolved and wasn't preserved. And the neck vertebrae would have probably been drawn in closer together by ligaments during rigor mortis. So there's a lot of questions about the soft anatomy of the neck of the plesiosaurs that they're not sure about, that could have affected the amount of flexibility they had in the vertical plane. One reason they don't think there was a lot of flexure in the up and down range is the fact that the plesiosaur vertebrae had high neural spines, these spikes coming off the top of the vertebrae. And the idea is that the higher they tried to raise the neck, the more these spines would bump into each other, and that would restrict the range of upward movement, if you follow me. But there's still a lot of controversy. They don't believe that plesiosaurs could hold their neck up at a 90-degree angle from the body.
Like the surgeon.
Let's say something like, something like 70 degrees was possible, and they had quite a lot of lateral flexion because there wasn't as much things blocking the lateral side-to-side movement. So if you had the neck raised up at, say, a 70-degree angle, which is possible, and then you also curved it looking backwards, it could assume the shape you see in the Manzi photograph, and then some of the Loch Ness photographs too.
Along the same lines as, that they had with the old classic dinosaurs, like the old Brontosaurus and all that sort of thing. They originally thought that they walked with the head up like that, and now it's like they walk stretched out. So it's biomechanical engineering problems. They know more about biomechanics now than they did 150 and 100 years ago. The science of animal biomechanics has improved to where they've gone back and tweaked these theories. If you follow me. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, another recent one was the hump that was labeled the catfish hump or whatever it was on Loch Ness.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a hoax.
Yeah, it was a hoax.
It's a hoax.
It didn't look right to me.
Yeah.
Once you zoom in and you enlarge it, you can see that it's a bit of a Photoshop job.
I saw that the first day. What happened was Roland Watson was able to find, with some help, the original picture of a catfish.
I saw that.
With the same patterns on the back.
Yes.
So he was able to figure out that they took that catfish and photoshopped it into a background picture of Loch Ness. So that was the smoking gun that solved that whole case right there.
I just thought it was amazing that they found that photograph of the catfish. Out of all the thousands and millions of photographs that are out there, they found that exact one with that pattern.
Well, if that particular picture had not been found, it would have always been suspected to be Photoshop, but the smoking gun would never have been found. But fortunately for us, the exact picture was found, and you can see the same pattern of spots in both pictures. You can overlay them and tell it's the exact same image that's been color changed and photoshopped into a real background photograph that was shot from Urquhart Castle. In other words, you can look at the features in the background of the background plate and tell that it definitely is Loch Ness, but that the catfish image has been superimposed into a real background of Loch Ness.
Very similar to that. There's one that's
part of the picture was taken at Loch Ness.
Yeah. But there's one that you've highlighted recently too, of the old. It's not from an old postcard. I've actually got a copy of the postcard too, of the long-necked dinosaur, and it was used, and they used that image.
That was Frank.
Yeah. That
was Frank Searle.
That's the one. Yeah, yeah.
He did that back in 1976.
Yeah, I've got the postcard.
Yeah. Yep. Frank Searle did that. He was a
Searle.
Bad guy.
I know.
Yep. He faked about, I don't know, 12 different photographs. Yeah. Finally, he got mad at Adrian Shine and threw a gasoline bomb at one of his boats.
Really? Wow.
And almost got arrested for it. And he finally decided, he pushed his luck up and left. And he never went back to Loch Ness. But he spent 15 years at Loch Ness taking photographs, more or less.
I went and met up with Adrian last year, actually. I was over in Scotland again. We try and get over there as often as we can. So I went and met up with Adrian and spent some time having a chat with him. Interesting.
You know Dick Rayner?
Dick Rayner? Oh, yeah. I haven't met him, but yeah.
I'm friends with him. And I know Tony Harmsworth a little. I speak to him every now and then on Facebook. So.
Yeah. That's great.
I've never had any contact with Adrian Shine, though.
No, he seems a nice guy. I mean, there's a lot of division about things his theories and things. But I think in this field, there's going to be a little bit of clashing, isn't there? There's going to be a little bit of debate, and nothing's really known for sure.
I disagree with him on some of his assessment of some of the classic evidence. However, I think he's done invaluable work on studying the environment of Loch Ness and the biology of Loch Ness. I mean, the work he's done on that has been invaluable.
Yeah.
So any figuring on what could be living in Loch Ness has to take into account all the fisheries biology work that he's done over the years. I mean, he's been over there almost 50 years. He started out working at Loch Morar back in 1973. And he's been working at Loch Ness, I think, since 1977. So he's been at this almost 50 years.
Yeah. Actually, there's quite a few different monsters on the various lakes of Scotland, isn't there? Morar and all that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those? There seems to be like a monster in every lake.
Well, a few of them are part of the Caledonian Canal, which connects to Loch Ness. You've got reports from Loch Lochy, Loch Shiel, Loch Oik. And then you got Morar, which is to the west and south, I believe, of Loch Ness. It's not that far away. I think it's like 80 miles. So you gotta think that at the end of the Ice Age, when the glaciers were receding, there was all this melting ice, raising sea levels everywhere, and making Loch Ness part of the sea. They found marine invertebrate fossils in Loch Ness. From that time period in 2001, Robert Rines and his geology people found them in Loch Ness. So they know for a fact that Loch Ness was marine at that time. And this is roughly contemporaneous with the marine version of Lake Champlain, which they call the Champlain Sea. And in Vermont and New York State, you've got fossils of whales and seals that have been found there that were living in the marine version of Lake Champlain. So, some of the fish that live in Lake Champlain now have genetic evidence to suggest that they were living in the marine version of Lake Champlain alongside these seals and whales, their ancestors were. So the idea that something could survive and adapt to fresh water has been proven by the existence of those fish. And something similar could have happened in Loch Ness. But Loch Ness, compared to Lake Champlain, has much less biodiversity and a smaller food supply. If there is a resident population of something in Loch Ness, it has a much harder time surviving food-wise than something in Lake Champlain. There's plenty of food for a population of animals to eat in Lake Champlain. In Loch Ness, it's more catch as catch can, because you've got a very small resident fish population in Loch Ness, but you have an unknown amount of migratory fish all the time moving in and out of Loch Ness. You've got salmon coming in to breed and die, and then you've got their children going out, and you've got migratory eels coming in and out of the lake. So you might have a situation at Loch Ness where something feeds seasonally. When there's a lot of migratory fish in there, it eats a lot of food and then goes through a period of famine. In other words, when the migratory fish are there, it may eat a lot and then go into a state of sort of pseudo-hibernation when there's not a lot of food there. They just don't know. In order to know this, we first got to confirm the existence of a Loch Ness monster, definitely, then be able to study its eating habits once we found it, which is a rather tall order, but that's what has to be done, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Same with Cham, you know? We can speculate about what we think might be going on, but without confirmation that there definitely is something there, we're kind of in the dark, you know? The reason we know so much about known types of animals is because their existence has been established, and scientists have been studying them in the wild, observing them as they hunt and eat and breed and all that stuff. That's the only way we have this information. Anybody that tells you otherwise is overreaching, in my opinion.
Yeah, true. All right. I want to do a bit of a best and worst for you. I like to get people's different opinions. What is, in your opinion, the best evidence that's been presented so far? The best photograph or best video that's out there for lake monsters?
Well,
what's your favorite?
I would probably have to say Tim Dinsdale's film from 1960.
Yes, another one.
It's still considered to be the classic piece of lake monster evidence. And there's been, you know, several attempts to try to say it was a boat filmed at a distance, that Dinsdale was mistaken. But those are simply opinions. You've got several other opinions of people stating that, well, the propeller wash is wrong for a power boat and all sorts of questions like that. It's moving too fast. There appears to be a portion of the video where it looks like it goes underwater and then comes back up. You know, so I don't know. It's controversial, but to me, that still remains the best piece of video evidence. Beyond that, I would say that Bodette video from Lake Champlain, because that looks exactly like a plesiosaur's head and neck off the side of the boat, and you can see the head move. Yeah. So it's obviously not a static piece of wood floating there. It's something alive.
Yeah, it's a shame that piece isn't longer.
Well, it could have been, you know, a hoax with a model or something, an animated model. We can't rule that out, but it looks real, whatever it is. So.
And the worst hoax?
The worst hoax.
The worst photo you've ever seen in your life?
Oh, good. Probably that brontosaurus picture by Frank Searle.
Oh, yeah.
So pathetic. And when you see them side by side, it's just like, how obvious. Could anybody think they'd get away with that, you know? Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious when you see the postcard.
Yeah, they sell the postcards around Loch Ness. Sooner or later, the penny would have dropped and somebody would have figured it out if the newspaper hadn't busted them when they did, you know?
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually click to it until I saw a photo comparison that I think you'd put at it with the two side by side. And I'd seen that photograph before in a book somewhere. And then I think it was your analysis of it.
Yeah. Well,
and maybe go out and hunt. They went out and found the postcard. Yeah.
It's old history if you're familiar with the events at Loch Ness. You know.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I'll touch on you've put a book out as well, alongside all your research. You put a book out, Night of the Living Dead.
It's on Amazon. It's an ebook called Night of the Living Dead Plesiosaurs. And the main theme of the book is the fact that there are fragmentary plesiosaur remains from past their presumed extinction date scattered throughout the age of mammals and up into the Ice Age. And the standard explanation that the geologists give for these fragments is that they were knocked out of their original Mesozoic fossil deposits and reworked into younger fossil deposits by accident. And I go over the entire history from the geology literature of all these different fragments, where they came from, the time periods and all that. And I'm trying to suggest that maybe they aren't reworked, but maybe they are a fragmentary record of plesiosaur survival from the time of the Mesozoic up until the present day. Maybe of plesiosaurs that lived out in the deep ocean that normally would have been found in places that are not conducive to preserving fossils, but that may have occasionally come into areas, swam up rivers from the ocean or something, and left fragmentary fossil remains throughout those intervening millions of years. So it's all in the book and with the references and everything. And I'm comparing it with things like the Loch Ness evidence, the Lake Champlain evidence, the Zuyo Maru carcass, all that stuff is in there.
Yeah. I haven't read it yet, I will admit that, but it's on my list. I've got a huge stack of books I've got to get through at the moment, so I've got that one on my list.
It's only available as an ebook, but it's cheap. It's only $7.
I know.
And it's like, I think, 300 pages, 400 pages, something like that.
Really?
So you're getting, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've got a book out then. So what's next for you then? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, I'm planning on going to Lake Champlain next month, but there are complications arising from the coronavirus that I haven't anticipated. So I'm trying to work around those. There's the possibility that I may have to go to Vermont and quarantine for 2 weeks and then manage to salvage 2 more weeks after that to do any research. I don't know. I'm trying to weigh my options here.
Yeah.
There's also the possibility of bumping it up a month to see if things change on the ground. I just don't know yet. So I'm trying to make up my mind what I want to do to deal with this problem. So. I'm doing everything within my power to go ahead with my original plans, though.
Yeah.
So I'm the trooper. I'm dying with my boots on.
That's right.
Speaking of New Zealand and Australia, are you familiar with stories of a monster from Lake Taupo?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rex Gilroy seems to think there's a monster, a plesiosaur-like monster in Lake Taupo.
Yeah, I've got a few newspaper clippings about that. It's an interesting one. It's sealed off from the ocean, but there is a Lake Taupo which is in the centre of the North Island of New Zealand, and it's I'm not sure about that. There's a lot of folklore, Maori folklore around it, which carries on from the Maori folklore of the Taniwha.
The Taniwha. I'm familiar with.
Yeah, but we have got
some people think the Taniwha may be talking about a mosasaur rather than a plesiosaur.
Yeah, it does.
There seems to be some confusion about that. But there are supposed mosasaur sightings around New Zealand too. Yeah.
Well, there's a lake not too far from here actually. It's Lake Papuki, and it's a volcanic lake.
I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, and I've got newspaper clippings that I had picked up when I was young and back in the 80s, and of this monster in Lake Papuki. And we've been spending quite a bit of time at Lake Papuki at the moment because there's a theatre beside it that we do a lot of our paranormal research. So it's brought us back to Lake Papuki. So we're spending a lot of time there. But there is supposed to be some sort of creature in there that is big enough to tip over boats and kids in their kayaks. It's pulled under swans and ducks under the water, and it's pulled under dogs. One eyewitness report was from 2 guys that were out there in a little rowboat, and they said that it came up right beside the boat and it kind of rolled over like, and they described it as being like a dull grey shape the size of a tractor in a tube. They kind of sort of rolled through the water and sort of just nudged
like I said before, you've got those big long finned eels. And they're known to get 6 or 7 feet long, you know. If you had a slightly larger one, that would definitely qualify as a monster.
That's right.
I think they're quite aggressive.
Yeah, well, the whole lake itself is actually a lava. It's a lava rock sort of based crater. So there are a lot of lava tubes coming off it. And it's thought that
probably an old volcano bed. I know the words for it and I can't think of it. What do you call a dead volcano with water in it turns into a lake? There's a word for it.
Yeah, another one. I can't
anyway.
But
you've also got, from Australia, you have some plesiosaur-like sea serpent reports from around Sydney, and you've also got plesiosaur-like reports on the Hawkesbury River.
That's right. Yep.
You probably heard Rex Gilroy talk about that too. Yeah,
love that man. He's a trooper. That guy.
Yeah.
An inspiration.
He's been out there looking for the Boronjor, the dinosaur.
Yep.
The T-Rex type dinosaur out in the outback, and there's also a giant goanna, which they think may be a survival of Megalania.
Yeah.
Reported back there too. So, Megalania was a relative of the Komodo dragon that lived in Australia about 1 million years ago that got about 25 feet long. And supposedly has gone extinct only in historic times. In other words, there were aborigines there when Megalania was still alive, and apparently they killed most of them, hunted them to death, is the theory. So.
Well, Rex has got an old, he's got a print casting as well of one of those giant Komodo dragon type creatures.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
yep, I've seen it.
Massive. It's about huge, big thing like this.
Yep.
It's great.
Giant 3-toed footprint. Yep. Seen it.
So he's onto something big there, but it's he's got his detractors and he's got a lot of skeptics out there that'll belittle him and put him down.
Well, there's
much respect for him though.
There's hardcore skeptics that reject all the evidence of cryptozoology.
Yeah.
So what can you do? You're researching something that a lot of people don't have any faith in, so you can either just ignore them and go ahead with your research and try to do a good job. They scream at us and say, well, it's not science. Maybe it's not science yet, but if we keep looking, we might get enough evidence to make it science.
Exactly. Exactly.
So wait and see.
Yep. All right, Scott. I'll let you get to sleep, my man. I think it's getting quite late there now. Is it not?
Yeah.
Okay. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
I've been
thank you for having me on. And if you need some help, with the video end of this, put some of those images in. Let me know. I'll be more than happy to help.
Okay. I'll give it a go and see what happens. I've got all your photographs and videos.
All right.
So we go.
Be sure and let me know when you get this. Yeah. Be sure and let me know when you get this posted.
I will do.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Have a good night.
It's been great talking to you. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yep.